So you're planning to visit Banff in June? You're not alone. June is the moment when the mountains start to come alive again. You've got longer days, greener valleys, and a good chance of wildlife sightings. And finally, more trails starting to open up. Welcome to the Banff Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Celine Brewer, a local Canmore resident living the mountain life all year long. When I'm not hiking to a new viewpoint, hitting the local mountain bike trails, or skating on frozen lakes in the winter, I'm helping travelers like you plan unforgettable trips to Banff National Park. As co-founder of Banff Travel Planning and Travel Banff Canada, and a fellow traveler who spent years exploring the world with my husband and our 2 kids, I know what it takes to plan a trip that's smooth, stress-free, and full of those wow moments. Like May, June is also still a transition month, and if you're not prepared, you might find yourself surprised by trail closures, snowy, muddy, icy trails, or shuttle schedules that fill up fast. In today's episode, I'll walk you through exactly what to expect in Banff in June, what's open, what's not, and how to make the most of your trip. As I said, June is when Banff really starts to come alive. It's the unofficial start of summer here. The days are long. We're talking 17 hours of daylight by the end of the month, and almost all the snow in the valleys is gone, with some lingering at higher elevations, which means hikes and sightseeing really start to ramp up. Those long evenings are so wonderful for truly making the most of your day. Once you've gone for dinner, you still have a few hours until sunset, which isn't until 10 p.m. later in the month. This is an excellent time for a leisurely walk or to go catch a sunset somewhere. Unless you're like me and up at 5 a.m. catching those sunrises, then you might be ready for bed before 10 p.m. I get so many messages from people asking when the best time to visit Banff is, and the truth is there's no single best month. But if you're after that perfect mix of warm weather, snow-capped mountains, and fewer crowds than July and August, early June might just be your sweet spot. Just know as we progress further into the month, it's going to get busier. So what is the weather like in Banff in June? I recently had someone in my Facebook group post a picture at Moraine Lake, and one of the comments was, "Oh my, is it really that cold there? I need to rethink my packing," as the couple in front of Moraine Lake was all bundled up. So the temperatures may come as a surprise to you, especially if you're from a warmer region. Average highs in Banff are around 19 degrees Celsius, so 66 degrees Fahrenheit, but it can swing quite a bit from that. Some days might hit 25 degrees Celsius or higher, and others could feel like early spring and only hit a high of 10 or 12 degrees. Lows at night can still dip close to freezing, especially early in the month, so keep that in mind if you have any sunrise plans. Snow in the mountains is very much still visible on the peaks, and you may even have some snow falling on you if a cold front runs through. Now, while July gets the award for the warmest month in Banff, June gets the award for the rainiest. We'll get more into what to pack, but a rain jacket is a must. And don't worry too much about the rain. The weather changes quickly, so rain can come and go just as fast. Now, more importantly, what's open in Banff in June and what's still not accessible or closed? The good news is almost everything is open come early June, and a few lingering things opening up throughout the month. Moraine Lake access opens up. The road to Moraine Lake is cleared. Shuttles are running. That started on June 1st. Lake Louise, typically thawed. It was this year, and the boathouse opens for canoe rentals by late May to early June. The Lake Louise gondola usually opens in the first week of June, June 6th for 2025, and it can be great for wildlife viewing or just another adventure in Lake Louise. The Mount Norquay chairlift, the Cliff House Bistro, and the Via Ferrata open around mid-June, so this year it'll open around June 11th. Sunshine Meadows gondola unfortunately doesn't open until the last weekend of June. This year, June 27th is the opening date. Now, if you want to know more about the gondolas and chairlifts around Banff, head back to episode 7 where I go into the details on all of them. If you had Takaka Falls and Yoho National Park on your itinerary, just know that the Yoho Valley Road typically doesn't open until mid-June, so you'll need to keep an eye out on that one. The tea houses at Lake Louise, Lake Agnes Tea House and the Plain of Six Glaciers Tea House will open sometime in early June, so look for those announcements. In Jasper, the Cavell Road to Mount Edith Cavell area typically opens later in June, but this year there's further assessments and cleanup after the fires, so that's something to just keep an eye out to see when it opens. Now, if you're coming in the first week or 2 of June, keep in mind that high elevation trails are still going to be snowbound and there may be some avalanche risk. You always want to check trail conditions before heading out. You may even find viewpoint trails like the one to Peyto Lake viewpoint along the Icefields Parkway is still snow covered and slippery. So while it may feel like summer down in the valley, up at the higher elevations and in the Alpine, it's still very much spring and not quite caught up yet, especially in early June. And just to complicate things a little more in 2025, the G7 summit is being held in Kananaskis from June 15th to 17th. What this means is some closures in Kananaskis, some controlled access zones, highway checkpoints, and some airspace restrictions are going to be in place. This is mostly going to impact access to the Kananaskis village, some of the trails around there like Troll Falls, the Nakiska area, Barrier Lake, and again, surrounding trails. Even some of the trails along the Smith Dorian are going to be impacted at this time. I'll post a link where you can get more information on the closures in the show notes. But what does this mean for you? If you're traveling to the area in June, especially between June 10th and June 20th, and the Kananaskis area was on your list, make sure you do your research on where you can and can't go. I'd plan to be further away from the area in general during the actual summit, June 15th to 17th. That would be a great day to head up the Icefields Parkway or visit Yoho National Park. Now that we've gone through what's opening and what might still be closed, let's talk about what you can do in building that itinerary for June. You're definitely going to want to visit Moraine Lake and Lake Louise. This is your chance. June is still early enough to avoid some of the midsummer crowds. You'll be able to go up the rock pile and walk the lakeshore trail at Moraine Lake. Typically this time of year, early June, Constellation Lakes is still going to be pretty snowy and muddy. And unfortunately, canoeing will open later in Moraine Lake once the water levels are high enough. I've looked recently, and some of the other hiking trails like up to Larch Valley and Sentinel Pass are still quite snowbound with some avalanche risk, so you're definitely going to want to check out the conditions depending on the time that you're here. At Lake Louise, you can canoe, walk the Lakeshore Trail, hike to Lake Agnes and the Beehives, assuming you've confirmed there's no avalanche risk, or hike to Fairview Lookout. If you want more information on what to do and how to plan your time at these two iconic lakes, listen to episode 10 where I go into detail on what you can do at each lake and how to plan your time. This also helps you choose the right shuttle option. In June, gondolas and chairlifts are there for extra activities. All year long, you can ride up the Banff gondola up Sulphur Mountain. Lake Louise is an option now that we're into June. With both of them open, they're perfect for sightseeing without any strenuous hiking. If you're visiting later in the month, those of you who are adventurous can do the Via Ferrata at Mount Norquay, or if you're visiting late in June, add Sunshine Meadows to your itinerary. A must-do in June is cycling the Bow Valley Parkway. The eastern portion of the Bow Valley Parkway is vehicle-free through June 25th, and it's one of the best biking experiences in Banff. The Legacy Trail that connects Banff and Canmore is always a good cycling option too. If you're visiting the Lake Minnewanka area, the cruise is up and running, and it's a great way to explore the biggest lake in Banff. As a bonus, you'll learn some fascinating local history while you're on board the cruise as well. Definitely leave some time for wildlife watching. This is prime time for spotting those bears, elk, Rocky Mountain sheep. Just make sure you're practicing safe wildlife viewing. Never get out of your car, never get too close, and obviously don't feed the animals. If you have an extra day, I highly recommend exploring Yoho National Park. Emerald Lake and Natural Bridge are both gorgeous this time of year. Or you can head out further west to Wapta Falls. Once the Yoho Valley Road opens up, then add Takaka Falls to your itinerary as well. Don't forget to spend a day in Canmore. There's some really great hikes around Canmore. There's mountain biking, the river float is fantastic, or just walking the river trails around town. The Icefields Parkway is always a great way to do a scenic drive and make a bunch of incredible stops. You can expect some icy snow trail conditions to Peyto Lake Viewpoint early in the month. While many of the hikes are still going to be snowbound with avalanche danger in early June, there's still plenty of great stops to make. Now, I've mentioned snowbound trails a few times and avalanche risk, but just know that there are still plenty of hiking trails that are good to go even in early June. Some examples of those would be Castle Mountain Lookout, Tunnel Mountain, Johnson Canyon to the Ink Pots, Johnson Lake, or Grassy Lakes in Canmore. I'll link my full guide to visiting Banff in June in the show notes so you can get a few more options on things to add to your itinerary. So we've talked about the weather in June and how it can be all seasons in one day and is very unpredictable. Plus, those mornings and evenings are still pretty chilly, especially early in the month. So how do you pack for this? You've heard me say it before. Pack layers that you can use all together as needed. Think about packing a light packable down jacket or a fleece, a rain jacket, hat and gloves just in case, especially if you're planning on doing sunrise shuttle up to Moraine Lake. Waterproof shoes or hiking boots are great for those muddy trails or if you encounter some rain. And sunscreen and sunglasses. Yes, even when it's cold. As for the rest of your clothes, I would pack some t-shirts and some light layers for daytime as you're removing your jacket or rain jacket when the sun comes out. Obviously, you want some bear spray for any hikes that you're doing, which you can rent or buy when you arrive. And then later in June is typically when we'll start to see the mosquitoes come out, so bug spray may be necessary then. Again, every year is different. As I mentioned, if you're planning on hiking, always check those trail conditions and avalanche reports, especially for the higher elevation trails. So here are my final tips for June. Start early. Even in June, parking lots still fill up fast. You want to get to popular spots early or later in the day. If you plan on driving to Lake Louise, then you'll want to be there extra early. And don't forget, you need a shuttle from Moraine Lake, so plan ahead for that one. All the canoe rentals are first come, first serve, so get in line early before the tour buses start to arrive. Be flexible. Trails might not be open yet or weather might change your plans, so it's always good to have some backup options. And probably for the 10th time I'm going to say this on this podcast episode, check the trail conditions before heading out using the Parks Canada website, which I'll link to in the show notes. They may have a closure due to wildlife, or you may want to check if there's any avalanche risk left on those trails. Be wildlife aware. This is prime time for bear activity. You want to carry bear spray on your hikes and know how to use it. It's also the time when the elk are calving, so you want to make sure to give a big berth to those elk. The female elk can be extremely aggressive, and you may not even know that they have a calf hidden in the trees nearby. Finally, you want to just check for any other closures, especially mid-month if you're heading towards Kananaskis. All right, it's time for our listener question of the week. And this is another question I do get quite frequently, especially this time of year. How can I visit Johnston Canyon when the road is closed in June? I get asked this question so much given the closures on the Bow Valley Parkway. Now, it's important to know that there are 3 entry points onto the Bow Valley Parkway. One is just 6 kilometers past the town of Banff. The second one is another 20 to 25 kilometers down the highway called Castle Junction. And the third one is at Lake Louise. Only the section from Johnston Canyon to the first exit on the Bow Valley Parkway is closed to vehicles. Now, there's also a seasonal overnight closure from March 1st to June 25th, which means no access to that part of the road from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. That entire section that is closed is only 17 kilometers of this 48-kilometer road. So what does this mean for you driving? You just can't get on the Bow Valley Parkway at that first exit. You'll want to stay on the Trans-Canada Highway until the second exit at Castle Junction, and then you can easily drive to Johnston Canyon that way. Make sure you tune in next week where I go into more details on this, Johnston Canyon, and the Bow Valley Parkway. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Banff Travel Podcast. If you got value from this episode, do me a favor. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss the next one. It's free and it helps the show, and it keeps you in the loop. I'd also appreciate if you left a review. If you'd like to support the podcast, I now have a page where you can say thanks, send a tip, or grab one of my downloadable guides. You'll find it at travelbanffcanada.com/support. And I appreciate every single bit of support. It helps me keep this going where I can help travelers like you make the most of their trip to the Canadian Rockies without the stress or overwhelm. And if you have a question you'd like me to answer in a future episode, head to banfftravelplanning.com/podcast and send it in. Until next time, happy trip planning, and I'll see you out on the trails.